The first thing that I tell any person who is avoidant or identifies with a dismissive or fearful avoidant attachment, I tell them that the very first thing they need to do is, number one, they need to find a trusted source to gain more knowledge, more support from. So it's very difficult for us to be critical of ourselves and to analyze our behaviors without either going into like being super critical or excusing our own behaviors. We just have blind spots. That's just a part of being human. So you need to have someone that you really trust to be a guide. And this should be someone who is not involved in your daily life, because it's really difficult for people to not create some bias as they're giving you advice if they're a really close friend or if they're your partner or if they're a family member, because we want a certain version of that person whenever we're trying to help guide someone who is close to us. So I do recommend that you get a therapist, a counselor, a coach, someone that can be an outside perspective to kind of keep you in a really good place as you're moving along on your goal of healing. The next thing that I would tell you to do is to start identifying and being honest with yourself as much as you can, and then checking in with that trusted person, that trusted mentor, with which protest behaviors, if you start doing some research into attachment styles, you're going to find a whole ton of information on protest behaviors. Do you struggle with and do you kind of lean into the most when you're feeling overwhelmed? And if you are specifically avoidant in romantic relationships, then I would look at the ones that people use specifically in romantic relationships, and then become more aware of them when you're overwhelmed. So you need to be aware of the behavior and also have a behavior that you're gonna put in place instead. So if ghosting completely and never responding is a go-to for you, that is a protest behavior that you choose in romantic relationships, what are you going to put in place instead? And how are you going to monitor yourself when you start to want to do that behavior that is really hurtful? It breaks the relationship whenever we do that. So instead, it could be you send a text message saying, hey, I'm feeling really overwhelmed. I'm giving myself 24 hours to get back into feeling regulated. And I promise you that within 24 hours, I will reconnect so we can have a conversation. And then you have to hold yourself accountable to actually follow through with whatever this new set of behaviors that you're committing yourself to, instead of the old behavior that was really hurtful and destructive. That is just one example of what needs to happen in order for you to not be avoidant in your relationships anymore. That aside, in order to fulfill that in all of the different protest behaviors that are hurtful, you're going to need to do some deep digging into your own attachment wounds that caused you to be avoidant in the first place. Because we cannot just look at the surface level stuff of what's happening today and think that if we just create a new plan, that is going to totally radically change the way, like, of course, I'm just going to choose a new thing and I'm never going to be avoidant again. That's not going to happen. You have to go back and actually deal with the things that caused you to become avoidant in the first place. And that's where it does get kind of tricky, because it feels really overwhelming and it takes so much emotional energy and it takes so much trust of that guide that we talked about in order to do that work. So I hope that helped. If you have any specific questions, you can leave those in the comments and I'll do my best to kind of do a deep dive into what healing with an avoidant or as an avoidant looks like. Also, if you'd like to work together, I am accepting clients and we can kind of get into your specific issues. But this is the best that I can give you as just general advice for what to do for any avoidant out there.